So, as you've guessed, we're celebrating the longest night and the shortest day as we take up the light in our winter solstice. I just want to remind you our book of the month is this fabulous book called A Force for Good. And it is all about bringing the light, being the light as it shines in the darkness. And so this is what we do, right? We turn on the lights. And we seek to bring the light into the darkness. And one of the things that we know is that when we turn on the light, much is revealed, is it not? And the darkness can't fight back. And yet this is not how we normally take up this time of the winter solstice. In the winter solstice, we often talk about the battle of light and dark. And this image, right, is for those of you who are Lord of the Rings fans, right? This is Gandalf. From this bridge you shall not pass, he says, right? And he strikes the staff onto the bridge and he shines in brilliant light and the darkness falls into the abyss. And in speaking those words, he has brought the light fully into existence in that moment. And so this is often how we think about. This is the Judeo-Christian heritage. This is the heritage of the hero's journey. We all want to be on the hero's journey, don't we? We want to be that hero in our own lives. And our spiritual faith walk and metaphysics and a positive attitude and all the things that we talk about is to find that heroic place within ourselves that does not become frightened of the dark, doesn't become overcome by the dark, but is willing to strongly and powerfully stand in that place. Right, and do battle with that which we perceive of as darkness. Now, we all know this version of doing battle with the darkness. This is Luke, of course. He's traveling with Yoda, and where's Yoda just about ready to take him? Right, we know he's going to have to go in and he's going to have to confront his arch nemesis. He's in his training grounds. He goes in there. He does battle with Darth Vader, and ultimately Darth Vader falls and he slices open the helmet, and what does he see? Himself. Right. So this is another way in which we take up the hero's journey. We take up this notion that instead of actually doing battle out there with the darkness, that what we're really doing is we're doing battle with ourselves, with our own darkness, our own false beliefs, our own demons, our addictions. In the Eastern tradition, we're doing battle with our ego. And that when we look into the world and we see evil out there, we see darkness, that really what we're seeing is simply a projection of ourselves. And so if we want to go on a hero's journey from this point of view, right, it isn't that we're doing battle out there, it's that we're shining the light in here. And we're illuminating those places where we are caught, right, in our own darkness. And in the science of mind, we teach that there is actually no such thing as a force for darkness. There aren't actually demons. There isn't actually a force that has to be done battle with. That darkness is simply the absence of light. And what we have to do is turn on the lights. We turn on the lights, and the brighter that we make it, the more the darkness simply recedes. We learn that the darkness can't fight back. All right, you turn on a light switch in a dark room. It's not like the darkness puts on gloves and says, wait, I'm going to do battle with you. The light simply shines. Although if you look around in the room, what happens, the brighter and brighter it becomes, what happens to the shadows? Can you see them? They get darker, don't they? They become more visible. We have created a space in here with a whole lot of light. And when we shine the light into a place that feels or seems dark, actually the very first thing that happens is everything that is unlike the light in that place actually gets illuminated for us to look at. And so often when we move on this path of being the light, becoming the light, bringing the light, shining the light, it actually appears sometimes as though that proverbial stuff hits the fan, and it's all of a sudden, there's a whole lot more darkness that wells up. And what we remind ourselves of is they are simply the shadows of that which has been lurking there anyway, and it's just being revealed in the light for us to look at, for us to deal with, for us perhaps in some sense to overcome. And so all of these ways of looking at light and dark, especially in our metaphysics and in the Western tradition, make all primary the top chakras, the upper chakras in our body. The Western tradition, actually the truth is in parts of the Eastern tradition as well, the whole spiritual focus is up to the light. Up to the light, to become enlightened, to become lighter, to feel the ease and the grace. And we think of opening our third eye, we think of opening our chakra, experiencing the presence of that divine mystery, right? And then we come into deeper metaphysics and we say, oh, wait, we're living from the head up. We have to bring in our heart. Oh, we have to be heart people because, there's something wrong with the head. And so then most metaphysicians live from the heart up. And this is that whole focus, that whole trajectory into the light. Let's bring in the light, because no matter how you slice it, there's still something not okay with the darkness. We seek to transcend it, transform it, transmute it, or simply to light the light so bright the darkness goes away. And I think it's because we've been taught to be afraid of the dark. So Psychedelic, as they beautifully started our service this morning, right? Psychedelic was doing the traditional drum away the evil spirits, right? Make a lot of noise and drum away the evil spirits, which is, of course, traditionally what we do on the winter solstice night. And yet, there is another way of engaging in the darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding, Lao Tzu says. Where do you go when you close your eyes in meditation? But into the darkness. Where do you go when you sit quietly in the morning with your journal and you go inside, but in the darkness? One of our primary sense that we have in our culture today is our vision. 80% of what we take in is through our eyes. And when we close our eyes, we're thrown into a darkness that actually heightens other senses, heightens other awarenesses. And it is in that inner darkness, that quiet, still place, that we begin to make discoveries. It's not just shining bright lights on everything. It's also a move inward, downward, deeper, quieter, more still. And it's as if we could maybe this day, as we enter into the winter solstice, instead of doing battle with the darkness, what if we befriended it? What if we befriended it and we really understood it as something necessary and valuable? I grew up with a story, and I looked and looked and looked and looked and looked for the story and the image that came along with it. But I have indelibly etched in my brain an image similar to this, and it is the fairy of night. And she has behind her this long cloak, and she's literally pulling the curtain of light over the day so that the animals and the trees can rest. And I remember falling in love with that image. The idea that night came on purpose for the quiet, for the rest, for the rejuvenation that comes with that. I lived almost 20 years in Seattle, and while the summers were really beautiful, I couldn't wait for the fall. And I always felt like when those clouds rolled back in again, it was like a blanket that I could wrap myself up in. I knew that fires were coming and long cups of tea and quiet walks in the rain. And sometimes now in Texas, the light is so bright that it's almost jarring and glaring. And there's a way in which we can befriend the darkness, in which we can befriend this, this quiet, this opportunity for rest. And of course, as we come into the winter solstice, the longest night, we have the longest opportunity of rest, and it is the beginning of winter. And in most times, most places on the planet, except for the equatorial regions, right, whether you have winter now or winter in what we call our summer in the southern hemisphere, in that time of winter, all of the push for growth, the push for fruit and flower is relaxed, released. It dies back. And our gardens go to sleep, and our forests rest. And there's something really important happening. What's happening is because all of the external creation is let go of, the roots are growing. The bulbs are getting fatter. There's all of this stuff happening in the dark that we can't see, and is oh so very necessary for then the plant to spring back up in the spring and to begin its resurgence of growth. And you see, so often we avoid winter. We don't like the winter. We complain about the cold and the dark. Thomas More talks about depression as the cool, dark winter of our souls. And perhaps there's something going on inside there, a deepening. Perhaps our roots are growing strong and powerful, so that when the light comes again, there's such a renewed vigor for us to grow in. So the place where we really find this, we find this deep teaching in the yin-yang of the Eastern tradition. That you'll notice that in the yin-yang symbol, there's no battle here. You can actually see that within the cool dark, the red of light is emerging. And within the red, the bright light, the cool dark is emerging. And they're constantly emerging from each other. And the yin-yang is a complement. It's a complementary system, understanding the human experience and the physical nature of life, that there are seasons and cycles and turnings, and that we need these turnings, and we need the quiet and the darkness. This is particularly taught in our indigenous and in the goddess traditions. In the goddess traditions, we have the notion of the womb of nature. And in the womb of nature, it's verdant and fertile. It's also dark and messy and organic and unfolding. There's no linear understanding of a step-by-step process here. There's no clarity. There's no clear directionality and purpose. There is instead a growing unleashing of life itself. And this creative womb of nature is, we find it in the void, the pregnant void from which all things spring in Hinduism. We find this in the soul of science of mind, in that receptive, fertile ground of the mind which receives the impress of thought. And something happens, something mysterious and something unknown that's happening that we can't always see. But we actually have to be willing to let that seed drop in the soil and do what it needs to do. Now, we ourselves can go into the cave, we can go into that place of quiet and darkness. In Seattle, I used to go to the sweat lodges for 3 and 4 hours at a time. We would go into the darkness. And in that darkness, we would sit and be healed and be cleansed and find our quiet, our stillness, our center. And so I invite you now to join me in the cave, to become still, to become quiet, to rest. Close your eyes. Make friends with the darkness. Feel the breath after all that glaring light. Feel the relief, the letting go. And just be in the darkness. Allow your breath to find its stillness. Wrap yourself in the soothing quiet. Ground your feet in the earth. our very own psychedelic. Yes, drumming us back into, and could you feel the power of the drums, right? Okay, there's nothing light and fluffy about that. Not one thing light and fluffy about that. And so when we think about this move, this befriending of the darkness, what we're doing, do you see, is we're accessing the rest of us. We're bringing all of us into alignment. We're accessing our lower 3 chakras. And we in New Thought, we are not always sure we're comfortable with that. We don't like the word power. And yet this is our place of power, the ability to drum those drums with that kind of vigor and conviction. Our creativity, our sexuality, our sensuality, that place where life is birthing itself through us. And the root chakra, where we're engaged with the raw power of the universe itself. Oh, not all light and fluffy and beautiful, but dark and rich and fertile and powerful. And so when we befriend the darkness, do you see, we make friends with all of that. We make friends with the human experience. We make friends with the human condition. We make friends with the manifest body of God. Because remember, in the science of mind, we're not trying to transcend life. We're not trying to get over being stuck in a human body. We don't think this is an accident, or that it's something that we're trying to be released from. Do you see, this is the way the universe is experiencing and expressing itself. So there's this wonderful phrase here that I found, this beautiful prayer from the Mother traditions. Divine Mother of all life, please take me to that place deep within your womb where I can know nothing and be reborn anew. And be reborn anew. Do you see, when we're not afraid of the darkness, when we're not afraid of that, we can let it be exactly and precisely what it is. A womb into which we are invited that we may truly get a hold of our own personal power, the truth of who we are at the deepest sense of our being, human and divine, light and dark, the upper enlightened chakras and the lower chakras of life itself in the world, in the manifest body of God. And then we make friends, and we don't have to do battle with the darkness. We allow it to be the gift that it is. And so I want to close with this reading that I found. I wanted to gift it to you today, so you actually received it as you came walking in. And if you didn't, you can certainly get it as you walk back out again. But I just invite you to just allow this to be our closing prayer. You can read along, or you can just allow my words to guide you if you choose. The candles and holiday lights twinkling inside and outside our homes are often genuinely beautiful. Gentle, soft lights that coexist in harmony with the darkness. But can we become deeply aware that what made those lights so very lovely was the black drop of the night that surrounded them? Can we allow ourselves to be enfolded by the benevolence of that night? The stillness, the serenity, the deeply divine embrace of that velvety darkness as a beauty of its own, a gift in and of itself. What if this year as a restorative contrast to the cultural turmoil and the holiday busyness, you could open yourself for a few moments, here and there, to simply, trustingly surrender to the loving, soothing enfolding of divine darkness. What if you could allow yourself to pause and fully feel the restorative power within, the peace and quiet of the long nights of this season? In fact, what if this whole season is an invitation from the divine to experience deeply renewing messages from this tender, nurturing stillness? Messages that can only be received when you turn off the busy brightness of manufactured light and turn on your inner vision. And what if, in the embrace of this healing dark, you receive the grace to replenish your own inner divinity? The divine darkness is, in a very profound sense, a womb of rebirth for us all. And just as many people celebrate one wondrous birth at this time of year, you can also experience the power of your own soul's rebirth now. Allow yourself to fully relax into the darkness, both physically and spiritually, and receive the renewal that awaits you there. O holy night, a divine and blessed night, as we move into this winter solstice time of darkness. And so it is.